Greetings and welcome there, people of YouTube. So today's video is a little different. Rather than responding to a video, it will be a discussion about a rather recent news story coming to us from Birmingham, more specifically, Parkfield Community School. The school has recently made headlines in the British tabloid, the Birmingham Mail, owned by the Reach Company, who also own the Daily Mirror and the Birmingham Post. The story involves some parents being vocal about said school's No Outsiders resources, a program designed by a teacher of said school, a man by the name of Andrew Moffat, to promote religious, ethnic, gender, disability and sexuality harmony amongst the school's students. For the past 3 years, Parkfield Community School has taught age-appropriate sex and relationship education, or SRE, to years 3, 5 and 6, which correlates roughly with ages 7 to 8, 9 to 10 and 10 to 11. This is done in July, at the very end of the school year, and each year parents are invited into the school to review what it is their children will be studying. Now, at the end of 2018, a group of parents contacted the school about the new law coming into place, making comprehensive SRE compulsory as of 2020. Funnily enough, it had originally been intended to be enacted as of September 2019, but was pushed back to 2020 due to the government failing to reach key milestones. Now, amongst all of this concern, the No Outsiders program was drawn squarely into the crosshair. The first thing to keep in mind throughout all of this is the fact that No Outsiders, whilst being run adjacent to SRE and touching on a few other themes, is not itself SRE. No Outsiders is a collection of resources, including storybooks for the relevant ages, that gives students knowledge to the variety of human experience. Pretty much it contains stories that show more than the white nuclear family. So some are stories about children with disability, others have children of colour, or they're adopted, or they live with a member of the extended family, such as a grandmother. And yes, some have children with two same-gender parents. At first, the school was happy to invite parents for personal meetings, averaging about one a day at one point, and whilst many of the parents went away with an appreciative understanding of the No Outsiders program, the meetings had to be stopped after a few of them became very personal and aggressive. And there's even been a threat made against the teacher who created the No Outsiders program. During an interaction with a petitioner on January the 11th, Andrew Moffat was recorded without his knowledge by one of the parents whilst trying to figure out what their concerns were. Later that week, the school was called, and according to the news articles, someone told the school that the video of Moffat would be, quote, bad for his health, end quote. So I'm clearly running into what is a very emotionally charged environment here, though I just want to make clear that even though I am a militant secularist, I'm not responding in that tone today. My feelings on Islam, the Abrahamic religions, and religion in general are not why I'm making this video. I'm making this video due to the vital importance of not just SRE, but materials like No Outsiders, which cover so much more beyond what is typically discussed in SRE. The book starts out as a general guide before opening up with several specific subjects, and this is a list of the subjects it covers. And whilst a few do relate to sex and relationship education, topics such as to understand that it's okay to like different things, to be able to work with everyone in my class, to appreciate artistic freedom, and to recognize my freedom, as well as the vast majority of the topics, do not. That's why I and the school don't consider this to be an SRE resource, and it's all the more shame that the tabloids are only covering it in that way. But I also take issue with the way in which the tabloids are covering the local community. There does seem to be a large amount of hyperbole being spun by the papers and a few of the people involved, a fact we'll discuss later. But before that, I feel we need to go over the background to Andrew Moffat, the creator of these materials, as it does complicate things slightly. Thankfully, most of the information I'm about to share with you was compiled by Schools Week writer Jess Staufenberg in a profile of Andrew Moffat. By the way, if you want your faith in humanity restored after watching this video, then do go and read said article. It's a wonderfully uplifting read. So first things first, Andrew Moffat is himself a gay man. He grew up under the oppressive Section 28 introduced by Margaret Thatcher, a bill that forbade teachers even discussing the subject of non-heterosexuality. And so Moffat grew up closeted, only coming out to his family when he was 27. The bill was finally retracted as of 2003, but it was only in 2006, after entering a civil union with his husband, David, did his attention turn to helping students avoid the same experience he did. He created a curriculum resource called Challenging Homophobia, and here's where it becomes a little tricky. After leaving the school that he created the resources in and moving to Birmingham, he was told by the school governors that they wanted no part of his materials. Yet, he went ahead and used them anyway, also coming out during an assembly. The press caught wind of this in 2014, and Moffat was subsequently forced to resign. Moffat completely accepted his actions in not informing the parents beforehand, but he didn't let that discourage him. Joining a new school, Parkfield Community School, the school in question, he had a bigger vision, a comprehensive citizen curriculum based around the 2010 Equality Act, and this time he would do so under the full supervision of the school and its governors. And so that's what he did. Over several years, they created the program, a process involving high levels of parental involvement before it was finally published for other schools in 2017 with the blessings of all the parents who had attended the meetings. So how did we get from that to this?
This is our concern, no outsiders. We said all parents are on board with it, but the reality is no parents are on board with it.
How old's your child?
10.
And they're coming home and what they're saying to you?
They're confused about homosexuality. They're coming. We have nothing against Mr. Moffat. We're as British as they come. You know, we respect the British values and everything. But the problem is he's not respecting our ethos as a community, as one. They say we work with the parents, we listen to the parents, but this is not what they're doing.
Do you think it's right to promote LGBT in the classroom?
I just don't see the point. Why we don't send our children to school to learn about LGBT? We send them to school to learn about maths, science, and English.
So the woman you just saw was Fatima Shah, one of the few local parents who have taken issue with the materials, to the point that she's actually withdrawn her child from said school. She was one of 3 parents named in the article, with 5 in total being quoted. I feel this is important to note since the tabloids give the impression of a massive uprising outside the school gates. Yet, nowhere is that shown. In fact, this is the only photo I could find showing anything of a crowd, and it's just 2 parents and their children. Now, I had originally thought that the banners in the background could be part of the protest, but it turns out from another photo that they're just banners about parking. Of course, they can't quote every protester, but if there was a sizable group of parents, I'd expect to see some sort of evidence for that. So, considering that, let's move on to tackle the first issue.
We said all parents are on board with it, but the reality is no parents are on board with it.
How old's your child?
But the problem is he's not respecting our ethos as a community, as one. They say we work with the parents, we listen to the parents, but this is not what they're doing.
The article also quoted Fatima Shah as having stated the following, quote, "Sex relationship education is being taught without our consent. We've not been informed about what's being taught." End quote. And this is an opinion she shared with both Maria Ahmed and Mohammed Saqib, the other 2 named parents in the article. However, the obvious problem here is the fact that not only has Andrew Moffat been entirely open with the parents of said school about his program, inviting them to hour-long presentations with Q&As in which they can have their voice heard, but as noted at the start of the video, the school carries out reviews of its SRE curriculum, to which parents are invited to be a part of. So, not only have they been invited to Andrew Moffat's program presentations, which are not actually part of SRE, but they've also been invited to the presentations on the SRE curriculum. So, it's wrong on both fronts. So we know for a fact that these parents are being offered that information. They just don't bother to check it until the rumour mill starts, which is pretty insulting, not simply to the school and Andrew Moffat, but to all the parents that actually take the time to at least try and understand what their children are learning. And I get that not every parent has free time and money. But if you have the time and money to protest outside the school as you're paying for a private tutor for your child, you have the time and money to show a little initiative in showing an interest in your children's education. So that's complete garbage, just like the assertion that nobody is on board. The problem here is the fact that the majority of the governors of the school are Muslim. So if nobody had been on board, said program would have never been rolled out. The fact remains, 100% of those who took the time to come to the presentations and actually understand what was being taught, they had no issue with it. Only when people started warping what was being taught did that suddenly happen. Andrew Moffat did everything he could outside of kidnapping you and tying you to a chair to engage with you and the quote ethos of your community. He tried, you didn't, and now you're trying to frame him as the one lacking effort. And if that sounds harsh, take an interest before it becomes a problem. Moving on, we have this lovely sentiment.
Do you think it's right to promote LGBT in the classroom?
I just don't see the point. Why? We don't send our children to school to learn about LGBT. We send them to school to learn about maths, science and English.
So let's tackle the why then.
They're confused about homosexuality.
That's a pretty good reason as to why. Now, of course, the way said confusion is being framed here is in the same dishonest way that conservative Christians have done for the longest time. Rather than seeing the child's initial curiosity about a subject as an opportunity to investigate with them and learn, the primary reason we send children to school, it is seen as a challenge and thus something in immediate need of stamping out. We know children are not inherently incapable of grasping homosexuality and other forms of non-heterosexual relationships. How? Well, because they can grasp heterosexual relationships. The only long-term confusion here is the sort allowed for by pretending that LGBT+ individuals do not exist. There's nothing inherently sexual about a child having two parents of the same gender, any more than one having two parents of opposite genders. So whilst you say, quote, at this age it is inappropriate to teach them what is a gay or straight relationship, end quote, the reality is they're already being taught about straight relationships, and you're fine with that. Your only problem here is that they're now learning beyond that heteronormative paradigm. The fact is, if they're not taught about it, then they'll learn about it in some other way, whether that be through media or in person with someone else they know, or perhaps in exploring their own sexuality or gender. And I get that these parents love to assert that this is irrelevant to a Muslim community, but the fact is this: more than half of your children will be something other than completely heterosexual, just like the generations before them. The only reason you don't know this is because they're too afraid to talk openly about it. And that carries with it great risks. Risks Andrew Moffat is personally aware of and seeks to spare your child from. Which brings me to the last main point the parents make, or 2 points that result in a paradox to be more precise. The whole, we support Andrew Moffat and equality, but we don't want our children to be taught to be accepting of them. At this point we just reached hollow platitudes which are designed to avoid being called out for rampant homophobia, which yes, is a title you'll have to learn to live with until you educate yourself. Nobody is promoting homosexuality by your children being taught that same-gender couples exist, any more than they're promoting disability and teaching that disabled people exist. They're simply being provided basic information about the world we live in, as well as ways to treat others with respect in that regard. You can't generally claim to be respectful of someone whilst simultaneously arguing that teaching children to treat them with respect is in violation of your dogma. That is the exact opposite of respect, the deliberate withholding of it, not just in yourself, but your children. And this is an issue made all the more apparent in the petition letter handed out by Maryam Ahmed. It states, quote, "Brothers and sisters, is it okay for your children to be gay? Are you aware of the resources being used in literacy lessons promoting homosexuality? Did you know Mr. Moffat left his last role because parents believed he had no right coming out to children. They wanted all lessons containing LGBT to be removed from curriculum. Did you know that our children are now being taught the very same thing? Have you asked what your children are being taught? What they are reading? Please join us in our petition to have the No Outsiders removed from curriculum. Please help us make a difference to what children are being taught." End quote. And an important little detail about this petition drive: some parents have come forward to the school and told them that they were pressured into signing and don't actually agree with what is written. But please note the opening question. Brothers and sisters, is it okay for your children to be gay? All this does is demonstrate the dire need for these materials in this area. The answer is yes, by the way. Those of your children who are gay, bisexual, transgender, or anything else under the LGBT+ umbrella not only exist, but are perfectly fine. Now, I've already addressed the dishonest portrayal of what happened to Andrew in his previous job, not only in how events there were completely different, but the materials are not the same. And I'm glad that thus far the school is standing with him. And why wouldn't it? Ofsted had the following to say about the school in 2016. Quote, "The provision for pupils' spiritual, moral, social and cultural development is a strength and permeates the school's work. This is an inclusive school that celebrates diversity. As a result, pupils demonstrate respect for an individual's age, disability, gender or gender reassignment, sexuality, race, religion or belief." End quote. And a large part of that is Andrew's work. In another place they stated, quote, "The provision for pupils' spiritual, moral, social and cultural development is a key strength of the school. Fundamental British values are actively promoted through the school's work on No Outsiders in our school, which develops pupils' understanding of how the Equality Act relates to and affects them. As a result, pupils celebrate diversity and are respectful towards others, including those with different beliefs, sexuality, gender or culture." One pupil spoke for many when she told inspectors, "Everyone is an insider in our school. There are no outsiders, whatever their beliefs, whatever their colour, gender or sexuality." End quote. That was a government report quoting what a kid told them. And if they quote the child as a government report, they have to damn well quote that child. No paraphrasing. The report also stated that, quote, "The school's work to promote pupils' personal development and welfare is outstanding and is a strength of the school. Pupils' understanding of tolerance, diversity, respect, rights and responsibilities, and equal opportunity is enhanced through thought-provoking teaching and other activities, such as assemblies and visits to places of worship. The school's work on No Outsiders in our school actively promotes fundamental British values and teaches pupils how to make a positive contribution to local, national, and international communities. Prejudices and stereotypes are confronted and challenged. As a result, pupils play and work together happily and with confidence, and all pupils have equal opportunities to succeed and do well." End quote. And just reading that makes me happy. However, a local councillor by the name of Mohammed Idris disagrees. After the story broke, he came out in condemnation of the school and No Outsiders in a diatribe that frankly exposes a lack of desire to even study the materials, their contents, and their impact. He stated, quote, "Children for me are too young to be learning about this. It's not a good idea." End quote. This completely ignores the fact that the materials are specifically designed and gauged to be age appropriate. The former school governor of a different primary school that introduced No Outsiders to their curriculum during her time there had this to say in response to the misinformation present. All of the books used are age appropriate, from reception age up to year 6. Governors examined the materials and we did a 2-hour presentation on No Outsiders. Then we considered whether it would be appropriate to roll it out across the school where the population is prone to bullying, homophobia, sexism, and racism. It was then decided that we should roll it out. We then had 2 open afternoons, and parents were invited into school in groups to examine the materials to allay fears. The school children, staff, and parents accepted it wholesale. There was no complaints." End quote. So in closing, these resources are important, not only because it allows the LGBT+ children who go to that school the chance to grow up happy in themselves in knowing that they're not alone, but for the fact that it teaches non-LGBT+ children how to function in a society where people can be more and more open about their gender and sexuality. These are key reasons to support No Outsiders, regardless of religious affiliation. Your religion does not give you the right to deny young LGBT+ people the right to feel safe and secure. And I look forward to when compulsory SRE comes into effect, hopefully alongside the still standing No Outsiders programme. Now there's an open school meeting planned for February the 2nd, and hopefully good news comes from it, though I may do a little update on what happened as the news comes out. I'm particularly interested to see if anything comes of the video and the apparent threat. But before I go, I just wanted to share a story of Andrew Moffat to convey the sort of person he really is. After Brexit, when children who had picked up on the shifting political climate approached Andrew and asked him about whether or not they'd be forced to leave their homes, he did this. He filled out the school trip risk assessment forms, bought a load of flowers, and had his students hand those flowers out to people in the town centre. Now, he told them that it was to make the people happy, but really it was to reassure his students that they were a wanted part of society. And though I'm not Muslim, just reading that story really warms my heart. If the school has any sense at all, they'll fight tooth and nail to keep a teacher like that. Thank you for watching. Take care now. Hi there, I'd just like to say a few things here at the end of the video before you go. First, I'd like to thank everyone who's ever donated to the channel via Patreon, giving a special thanks to the following people: Hannah Banghart, Matthew Kovac, Brad R, John Schoenrock, Alexander Williams, Ernst Puna, and Daniel Martinez. Your support has ensured this channel its ability to grow over the years, and really is the only thing that manages to keep the channel afloat. I'd also like to ask that you comment down below and like this video, as well as subscribe and follow Essence of Thought on Facebook and Twitter. Please also consider following Atheist Alliance International on Facebook, an organisation dedicated to helping atheists around the globe. Any comments utilising language which insults others on the basis of perceived gender, sexuality, ethnicity or ability both mental and physical will be removed immediately, and the commenter may be blocked on the moderator's discretion. Let's keep this space one which upholds the humanist values. Thank you.